Welcome to the Lead Every Day show. Our mission is to see a world well led. And our strategy to get there? To empower leaders like you to lead every day. So let's get to work.
If you've been leading for long, there's a good chance at some point in your career you've had a leader that was not so good, maybe even disruptive. Welcome to the Lead Every Day show. I'm Randy Gravitt.
And I'm Mark Miller.
And Mark, our listener question today is a fascinating one because it ties right into what I just said there. Here's the question. Two questions. Basically, they tied them together. How do you address an intentionally disruptive leader? You have a leader that's not so good. You and I dream about a world well led. We know that, I say this all the time. I mean, we got the elections going on and everything. There's all this stuff. And I don't care which way you vote. I don't think the government is going to solve all the challenges of our culture right now. And school just ended, and I've got a bunch of friends who are really great teachers. And education, we both value education. It's very important. But all my teacher friends are telling me, like, education's not the solve on all this. I mean, there's all kind of ways that we wrote Winning Begins at Home. I think great families can make things better. But I think great businesses can make things better. And businesses are great when they're well led. And so I love the idea of everybody having a great leader. But we all know if we have a leader that's not so great, it becomes really hard. And the person built on the second part of the question, how do you give difficult feedback to the leader above you if they're disruptive? I can feel the pain in the person here to know I'm not being well led. What do I do? How do I tell my boss here? And I want us to talk about that a little bit today. So here we go.
All right. I'm gonna take a slightly different turn on the question, and then we'll go wherever.
I like it.
We'll go wherever we need to go.
I like it.
And there are two questions. So just let me ramble for a second. I'm not assuming that a disruptive leader is a bad leader. Now, I know the second part about hard feedback may make us interpret
we're having to read into context.
Disruptive as bad. Some of the best leaders I've ever known were a 10 on a 10-point scale on disruption.
Yeah.
Because they always saw a preferred future, and they saw it before the rest of us saw it. Yeah. I remember having a conversation with a leader. Oh, by the way, 2 levels above me, right? And I was pretty high in the organization, so you can fill in your blanks as to who I was talking to. 2 levels above me, and he had a great idea, or at least he thought it was a great idea. And I went to him and I said, hey, we just introduced your last great idea. And it's going to take a while for people to absorb that, to process that, as our buddy Henry Cloud would say, to metabolize that, yeah. Right? And turn it into something valuable. I said, can we wait another 6 months for this next disruptive idea?
Yeah.
Oh, and by the way, he said no, but that's okay because we're under authority and he wanted to disrupt things again.
Yeah.
So I would encourage you, if you've got a leader that's always pushing into the future, that can be disruptive. It will be disruptive, yeah. Right? But progress is always preceded by change. And sometimes those leaders don't have a governor like other people.
Yeah.
But you take the good with the bad. They take you to the future, that you may have never been able to achieve without their vision. And they may take you there faster than you would have ever believed. So we'll talk about how you give hard feedback, but I'm not going to give in on a disruptive leader as a bad leader.
I want to kind of build on your disruptive leader. If you are that disruptive leader in the sense that you're talking about in the good way, and I'm not, your leader, we will do what they want to do. I got that if you're hearing that from your leader. But if you're that leader that is disrupting in that way, it's the old, shaking up the snow globe kind of mindset. They're there to shake up the snow globe. That's great. Mm-hmm. But I think at times you need to let that thing settle. You probably don't want it to settle all the way to the bottom.
Right.
And then shake it up again. But you got to give your people some time to process.
And sometimes a disruptive leader,
they don't care.
They'll just keep shaking. But that's okay. I mean, I'm saying you take the good with the bad, and it's highly circumstantial.
Yeah.
And context matters a lot. But if they're actually moving you toward the right types of things,
Yeah.
the net is good. Now, if they're marching you off a cliff
So
over time,
let's say,
then, yeah.
well, let's say they're maybe not marching off a cliff, but maybe they are. But let's just say they've got something going on where they're not leading the way they should.
yeah,
Let's go back to the question here.
Yeah.
How do we give what will feel like very hard feedback to us, probably to lead up? And it's going to definitely, if we have a leader that's not thinking correctly, and lots of times when they're not leading well, they're not thinking correctly. It might be hard for them to even hear that.
okay,
To challenge the process. I go back to there was a remember the leadership challenge.
Cosner and Poos,
Cosner,
Cosner.
Kuzn.
We know who we're
Posner
talking
and
about.
Kuznis.
Yeah, there you
I
go.
heard them speak.
The
Whatever their
Leadership
names are.
Challenge. Great
book.
book.
But the first thing was to challenge the process.
Mhm.
They talked about that,
Mm-hmm.
and that was one of the things. That wasn't necessarily about feedback with a bad leader, but just having this openness in your environment where you can, if something's not right, you're able to see
Okay.
something, say something.
Mhm.
I think that's important. But if I'm going to give hard feedback, or it's going to feel hard to me, hard to that person, how do I do that? So
Okay. Well, I would say the process of giving that hard feedback should begin months and years before you have to give the hard feedback.
shouldn't be shocking, right?
Well, I hope you've built a relationship of mutual respect,
Mhm.
of trust, of I hope you've created that openness. I mean, I always wanted the people who I led to tell me the truth. In fact, we talked about it a lot. I challenge them and I encourage them to do that.
Mhm.
But back to the question, if you've made a habit of doing things consciously and purposefully to help your leader be wildly successful, then I think part of that is giving them hard feedback and helping them see a perspective that they can't see. And so if you don't have that relationship, if you've not been working purposefully to help your leader be successful, and you just walk in and say, "Hey boss, I got to give you some hard feedback. You really messed up." Well, that may not play as well
Yeah.
as if you over time have been working to make them successful. And then I think you go in and say, "Hey, I'd love to give you some feedback. Is now a good time?
Yeah.
Are you open to that?" And then if they give you permission, then you tell them the truth in love.
Yeah, that's awesome. I also love the idea of we talk about this a lot, but the people who are closest to the problem, oftentimes closest to the solutions.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you're following somebody, you've got a better idea of what's really going on than that person probably does.
Right.
I mean, that's what they've given you responsibility for.
Right.
And so to be able to make sure you're explaining things, from your perspective. I know leaders don't like surprises. They don't like to know. They like to know what's going on. And the best way to find that out is through that person. If you're the leader who's listening today, and maybe you don't have an issue with your leader, but there's a chance that you're go back to even some of the things we're talking about the last few days with engagement levels. What's going on with your people? And I would encourage all the leaders listening to really go think, help the people around you, or ask the people around you what they're thinking about certain things that you may not know what they're thinking. They're thinking it whether you know it or not. And so go ask them and create this environment where there's this feedback. I say all the time, we ought to receive feedback. Yes. But I think the wise leader is the one who seeks feedback. They take it to, if you come to me and say, "Hey, I need to give you some feedback," I'm going to receive that. But for me to come to you and say, "Hey, what can we do? What am I doing
Kinda be
that can make
proactive.
it better for you?" I just have that kind of environment. And hopefully the people who are listening today could do everything they can. We think feedback is a gift. We think accountability is a gift. It really, it's not some punitive bad deal. It's a chance for us to all get better if we do this right.
Mm-hmm. Now, here's a tangent beyond the question. Let's pretend that your leader continues to be disruptive. Now, you can say good disruption, bad disruption. If you're on the receiving end, it might all feel bad, particularly if you don't see the vision that leader is trying to move the organization towards. But if the leader persists, and it is his or her prerogative, right? They have some area of responsibility and dominion, and they get to decide stuff in some part of your organization, then I would say you got to immediately flip the switch and say, how do we help this idea succeed?
Yeah.
And we may have to shape it. We may have to modify it. We may have to roll it out in phases or stages. But that's your next move.
Yeah.
If they want to, if they continue to persist at being disruptive,
it's to follow the leader.
Follow the leader.
But I will say this: if you get to a point where you don't feel like you can follow your leader, then I think you have to have the integrity at that point to make a change. I mean, you got to leave. You don't want to be disruptive in a negative way.
That's correct.
Because you can't follow a
There is
leader.
something more important than being right.
That's right.
And it's submission to authority.
That's exactly right. I think we both would say that. All right. I hope you'll think through some of the things we talked about today. Ask yourself, what's it like to work in my environment? What's it like to lead me? I love that question. What's it like to lead me? And ask yourself, am I doing everything I can to make my boss wildly successful? If you're doing that with integrity, I think you can feel good about that. And I think your boss would want to know if you're feeling something. It just, sometimes we need the courage to do that. And for me, when I've had those kind of conversations that felt like they were going to be hard, oftentimes it was really a good thing. My boss wanted to hear that. And we had a really opportunity at that point to move our relationship forward, and the work got better as well. So hopefully you'll give some thought to that and keep working on being the best leader that you can be. Remember, the best leaders lead every day.